welcome back to the second half of chapter 20. So now that we've talked about all the bits involved in the kidneys and how they all go together and how things flow, let's talk about filtration rates and math, because, you know, that's always fun. So, I thought this was appropriate. Now, there is a video here. No. Go. Shoot. Okay. I hope I linked that one too. So I put up I also enjoy using the Amoeba Sisters. They're kind of cute. Alright, so urine formation comes in 3 parts. So first part, glomerular filtration, where the blood gets forced into the glomerulus, you know, that thing I think that is really cool looking, and filtered out from there. And again, that's why the afferent is so big compared to the efferent, so that way there's a pressure differential going in and it forces everybody to go out because there's not a lot, you know, of room for everybody to run back out the other way. Then there's tubular reabsorption, where the filtrate gets parts of it reabsorbed by the PCT, the loop of Henle, and the DCT. And then there is the tubular secretion, which removes stuff from our bodies that we must get rid of, like toxins, and faster than filtration alone. I have no idea what my son is doing. Anyway, he just came out armed to the teeth and Nerf weapons. I don't know what's going on in his room right now. It might be an invasion. Anyway, all this being a nice math equation for figuring out what comes out. So glomerular filtration plus the tubular secretion minus the tubular reabsorption, in other words, what we're sucking back out, and the equals your urinary excretion. And there's a lot of different factors that can change this. For instance, hormones being one of them. Well, of course, we're going to talk about our dear friend antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, because he plays a major part here. So anyway, glomerular filtration. It's the first step of urine formation, and substances move from the blood in the glomerulus into the glomerular capsule. Water and dissolved molecules and ions can be filtered through, as we saw with looking at the pore slits and all those fun things, and how I kind of gushed about how cool it looks. So, large molecules such like proteins remain in the blood because they're too large to pass through. Glomerular capillaries are many times more permeable than other capillaries due to the fenestrae, or those tiny openings in the walls. And glomerular filtrate is formed as substances filter from the glomerulus into the glomerular capsule. The filtrate has about the same composition as tissue fluid, what you'd find in the rest of your body. Now, the main force that drives this sucker is through the glomerular capillary wall is the hydrostatic pressure of the blood inside the glomerulus. In other words, remember what I showed you earlier, or last time, the afferent arteriole has a larger diameter than the efferent arteriole. So, resistance in the efferent arteriole increases the blood pressure in the glomerulus, which favors filtration, which gives us another math equation, and the net filtration pressure equals the force favoring filtration minus the force opposing filtration. So the force favoring is the glomerular capillary hydrostatic pressure, and the things opposing would be the osmotic pressure and the capsular hydrostatic pressure. So in other words, again, what's going on is that bigger diameter puts more pressure, things get filtered, and the smaller efferent arteriole, you know, there's not as much, so the pressure builds up to force everything down out that way. So it's actually kind of, like I said last time, really clever on the part of the body to do that. Clever. Like I said, there's parts in your body that are like really clever, and then there's parts of your body that's kind of like, what were you thinking? Although, isn't that humanity in a nutshell, really? Anyway, so glomerular filtration rate, or GFR, is directly proportional to the net filtration pressure. So, yep, everything has to do with pressure. So, an average adult GFR is about 125 milliliters a minute, or about 180 liters a day. Test question. Test question. Anyway, and the blood plasma is filtered about 60 times a day. Test question. Anyway. So only a small percentage of the filtrate is actually excreted as urine. So isn't that crazy how much we actually, and I love this, it's in your book too, but look at that, 180 liters we filter a day versus how much actually comes out as urine. We are amazing, aren't we? I mean, just look at that. It's like beautiful. It's beautiful. All right, so how do we control it? Well, basically auto-regulation. So certain conditions can override auto-regulation, such as when GFR increases in case of excess body fluids. Say you're drinking too much one day, and I don't mean alcohol. I think we've all had it. We're thirsty, and then we drink and drink and drink and drink and drink. And then finally we're sitting there going, oh God, my tummy is full of liquid. Yeah, I think we've all had that moment. Anyway, so a mechanisms responsible for keeping the GFR consistent. So automatic regulation, which is our friend, the increased sympathetic impulses, keep GFR constant in changing blood pressure conditions by causing the afferent and efferent arterioles to constrict simultaneously. So both of those things going into the Bowman's capsule with the glomerulus can actually constrict. So, and that's sympathetic. So we can actually go, what? All right, let's chill on how much we're kicking out here. Also, our friend hormone like renin angiotensin system and hormones atrial natriuretic peptide and ventricular natriuretic peptide. Am I going to beat you with those two? No, because I like talking about my friend antidiuretic hormone too much. Anyway, so different parts of the renal tubule reabsorb specific substances, and you're going to see this especially when you watch some of the videos, that certain parts suck in certain things and certain things, travel down depending. So remember, there's different substances transported back into the internal environment by different modes of transport. Your three mains are active transport, because we have to spend ATP to get some of the things out that we really, really need. Osmosis, which is how our water reabsorption happens. And then endocytosis, which is the small proteins that made it through the filtration, but we need a vehicle to get them back over on the other side out of the, tubules. So, active transport, again, remember this is movement of substances against the concentration gradients. So remember, think of it like, how I think of active and passive is like active is like you swimming upstream against, if you get in a river and you're trying to swim against, upstream, it takes a lot of energy. It's not easy. Whereas passive transport would be, you don't really expend any energy. You just get in your inner tube and float down the river. So in this case, we have to actually go against the concentration gradient and use energy to actually do that. This is a limited transport capacity due to the number of carrier proteins, because sometimes we use proteins to carry these ions back and forth for us against a concentration gradient, kind of like a little boat. But unfortunately, there's only so many of those, and we can only do so much. So renal plasma threshold is reached when there is more transported substance in the plasma than active transports can handle. In other words, excess spills into forming urine. And this happens a lot, and this is why, the color of your urine can actually change, because you get something more in your diet. Or when we talked about the water-soluble, the water-soluble vitamins a couple chapters ago. Because they're water soluble and we've got too much, your body is just like, wow, we have way too much. We don't really need as much. And again, this is what happens is that threshold has been reached when we can't transport anymore because we've got already a ton, and therefore it just goes down and out of your urine. So there you go. Examples of this are glucose, amino acids, creatine, lactic, citric, uric, and absorbic acids and ions. So yeah, there's a lot of things that it's like, because there's a threshold, and now that there's just too much on both sides, it's like we're not going to take any, so go ahead and flush that down the system. So that's how a lot of, overdoses and certain things can be taken care of, thankfully, quite naturally. Then osmosis, again, like I said, is water reabsorption. We'll talk about that in a minute, because there's certain parts of both the proximal, the loop of Henle, and the distal that are affected by certain hormones that make it impervious to water or, actually open to water coming out. So it's kind of interesting. One of our friends being antidiuretic hormone. All right, so tubular secretion. So substances move from the plasma of the tubular capillaries into the fluid of the renal tubules. So these substances are wastes destined to be excreted in the urine. Active transport mechanisms function. Basically, they work in opposition, so we're taking back the things we need. Secretion of substances such as drugs. A lot of drugs actually do go out through our urine, which is why we have to be a little bit more careful when prescribing some things, because it's actually caused issues in our sewer systems and whatnot, as more antibiotics, because whatever antibiotics the body isn't using gets flushed out of our urine, and then it accumulates, and it's called bioaccumulation. So it accumulates out and through, and then even though we treat the water, hormones are a little something we weren't entirely thinking about when we were treating the water. And then all of a sudden, we've got, our waterways festering with stuff that is, bacterial, huge bacterial flows that, buildups in the water, which can make the water, dangerous and poisonous for us, not only us, but all living things in the water as well. And unfortunately, and then it's all antibiotic resistant because of all the antibiotic it had time to learn from all the antibiotics that have been flushing out of our system and collecting into the sewage and whatnot, and it goes back out into the world. So that's why we have to be, one more reason why we have to be very careful in using antibiotics, because it does have an impact on down the line. It's called, again, it doesn't seem like it because it's like, well, not everybody's on antibiotics all the time. Yeah, but, if it's still 1 out of 10 people and they're still going to the bathroom, and then that's more 1 out of 10 people in the next neighborhood over and the next neighborhood over, it's going to accumulate. So, yeah. Active transport mechanisms function in the tubular secretion, but they work in opposite direction. I just said that. Potassium is one that flows, even though we need potassium, but sometimes we make a little bit too much potassium. So anyway, secretion of hydrogen ions is important, and we actually have an entire chapter dedicated to this next time. So chapter 21 is pretty much us talking about the fun facts of hydrogen ions and which way they go. So anyway, and that's important in regulating the pH of body fluids. Like I said, this last statement right here, an entire chapter coming up. So, hormones such as aldosterone and cardiac natriuretic peptides affect the solute condition, especially of sodium. Remember, we use sodium quite a bit in a lot of our, especially in our neurons and whatnot, to get that sodium, potassium pumps, get the wave going. So anyway, the ability of kidneys to maintain the internal environment depends mainly on their ability to concentrate urine by reabsorbing large volumes of water. And this is where our friend antidiuretic hormone comes in, as I've been mentioning pretty much up until now. So anyway, the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct are impermeable to water in the absence of ADH. So if there's no ADH, it just lets all the water go out of your urine. And that's useful when we've been drinking way too much water, and that can happen. You can actually overdose drinking water. It's good luck doing it, but it can happen. But if antidiuretic hormone is present, they become permeable and the water is reabsorbed by osmosis into the extremely hypertonic medullary interstitial fluid. Again, this is where I was talking about that's hypertonic because it's salty. Remember, water follows salt. So all that salt on the outside makes all the water go right towards it. So water follows salt. So antidiuretic hormone lets the walls of the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct become permeable, so water can then escape into the salty area, and then we get water back, and we make more concentrated urine. However, this is where alcohol screws this whole thing up. Because what happens is alcohol actually blocks ADH's signal transmission. So ADH, remember, is a hormone. So your body, your pituitary gland is going, yes, we need more water because unfortunately this fool's drinking alcohol. So we need to stay hydrated. Because this is why alcohol dehydrates you. So he's like, hey, I'm releasing antidiuretic hormones. So, reabsorb some water. But the alcohol is in the way, and the kidneys are like, what? No water? Okay. Then we will not be permeable to water, and we'll just, get rid of it all. And your pituitary is going, no, that's not what I said. Dude, why can't you hear me? I can't hear you because all this alcohol is in the way. So, and that's why you have to go to the bathroom a lot when you're drinking, because that's what's happening. It's inhibiting the ADH. The kidneys don't see it, hear it, whatever. And because of it, you go to the bathroom and you don't retain the water you should be retaining. Which is why when you're drinking, please drink more water because it helps. Anyway, so I just talked to you about why alcohol inhibits ADH and why that makes you go to the bathroom more. All right, so although the majority of nephrons are cortical, juxtamedullary nephrons are more important in the regulation of H2O reabsorption. So remember, as I said in the last section of the juxtamedullary, the ones with the long loops are really more important in water regulation than the ones with the short loops. Even though, strangely enough, the ones with the short loops, which is the cortical nephrons, are vastly outnumber the juxtamedullary nephrons. Why? I don't know. Again, cool things about our body, dumb things about our body. But I'm assuming that we've got the number we need, or else we'd retain too much water. And if you retain too much water, and if you've ever been pregnant, I know there's guys out there, thankfully you'll never get pregnant because you're a guy, but yeah, what happens when sometimes we retain too much water. Swelling in parts, which we'll talk about in the next section anyway. So what's urea and uric acid? So urea is a byproduct of amino acid catabolism. So remember, we're breaking down proteins and we're putting together amino acids in the digestive system. So again, this is why we talk about the urinary system after we talk about digestion and respiration. And the plasma concentration reflects the amount of protein in the diet. So if you're one of those people that's like major into keto or what was before the keto? It still does. Was it the paleo? Yeah, the paleo diet, which is like eat like a caveman, which was. We have a lot of misconceptions about what cavemen ate. Yeah, they actually did not just eat meat. So, yeah. So there's that whole diet was based on a whole lot of misconceptions. And now we've got the liver king who sits there and says, eat raw, which is hysterical. And I failed to mention this, I think, during the digestive system chapter, is the fact that actually the reason why our intestinal tract actually is kind of short compared to other animals, especially obligate meat eaters like my cats here and Monty, is because we cook our food. We actually are more, we actually cut out a whole huge section of digestion by just cooking our food. It actually is a good thing we cook our food. We have adapted to cooking our food, which is why our intestines don't need to be as long as other creatures. So we actually made a shortcut for our own bodies by cooking food. So cooking food is a good thing. Eating raw, you will not get everything out of the raw meat that you will if you cook it. So the liver king is dead wrong. And because we're actually predisposed to need cooked food. We get more out of it if it's cooked. So that's what kills me. Even though no offense. I mean, I love me a nice, medium rare steak. I like the juices. But at the same time, I'm not going to go, eat raw liver because you're also asking for intestinal viruses. I don't care, or intestinal worms. not viruses, worms, or parasites, because I don't care how well you source the meat. There's no such thing as getting perfectly perfect, pristine meat that's never been, touched by any kind of disease or parasite in the universe. I'm sorry, we live on a planet filled with things. So, yeah. Anyway, unless you grow that meat in a lab, then I would have to say that would probably be the safest. But still, cook your meat. We get more out of it when it's cooked. So, me and the Liver King will definitely disagree there. Anyway, where was I? Right. All right, so, again, about when we're getting back to urea, so what's going on is, enters the renal tubules through glomerular filtration, undergoes both tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion. So about 80% is reabsorbed and about 20% is excreted in the urine. So we do need that back. We do use it for other things. So we need about 80% back and about 20% gets kicked out. So uric acid, this is a product of nucleic acid metabolism. So this is basically taking the nucleic acids and breaking them down so that way we can put them back together in our own cells when our cells replicate, blah, yada, yada. So this enters the renal tubulars through glomerular filtration. Active transport completely reabsorbs the filtered uric acid, and about 10% of the uric acid enters the urine through tubular secretion and then is excreted. Now, these might be test questions right here. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? All right, so urine composition. What is your urine made up of? So basically, it reflects the volumes of water and solutes in the kidneys must eliminate for the body to retain an internal environment to maintain homeostasis. In other words, it controls our pH. So, composition of urine varies due to dietary intake and physical activity, but it's about usually 95% water. It's usually going to contain metabolic waste products like urea, uric acid, and creatine. It's likely to contain trace amounts of amino acids and varying amounts of electrolytes depending on if you've got too much of one and not enough of another. Your body's going to figure out how to suck that back and, whatnot. Again, like we talked about, that hitting that threshold, it's like, oh God, we have so much on this end. We can't absorb any, so go out. So urine volume is about 0.6 to 2.5 liters a day, or 50 to 60 milliliters of urine output an hour is normal. Volume varies with fluid intake and environmental factors. And you've probably experienced this, like for instance, asparagine. If we eat too much asparagus, I do it too. It's actually one of the reasons my husband hates eating asparagus. He hates the way his pee smells afterwards. I too, it makes me kind of go, ugh. But I also like eating really well cooked asparagus, so we need it. But there is an amino acid in asparagus called asparagine. And if we eat too much asparagus, or just, a nice clump with dinner, the next day you will notice your urine has a particular odor. And that odor is actually the asparagine that you've got too much of. So, is this a way to get you out of eating asparagus with your family? I don't know. But, it is why your pee smells weird at that. Also, you probably, if you've drank too much soda, like I did, because we didn't have the crazy energy drink. We kind of did. We did have Surge back then, but I didn't want to touch Surge with a 10-foot pole. But I lived, when I was going through undergrad and pulling some all-nighters, I lived on Mountain Dew, which is why I can't drink it anymore. It's like, ew, Mountain Dew. Yeah, had too much Mountain Dew. But that also turned my urine electric yellow, so. So anyway, that's how it can change. So ureters. So these are the long tubular organs, about 25 centimeters long. Each begins at the renal pelvis in the kidney, and it goes down into the urinary bladder. And the wall of the ureter consists of 3 layers. We got the inner mucus coat, which is transitional epithelium, the middle muscular coat, and outer fibrous coat. Again, the muscular is getting that peristalsis, that nice wave to push the liquid down. The mucus coat protects basically the cells from, how acidic your urine can get. So that way we don't have anything, breaking down the cells. Again, peristaltic waves transport the urine around the ureters to go down into your urinary bladder, and obstructions such as a kidney stone, also known as renal calculus, in a ureter triggers ureterorenal reflex, which is basically strong parasitic waves in the obstructed ureter to move it down towards the bladder. It reduces urine production in affected kidney, and FYI, it hurts like a son of a gun. If you've never had one, I've heard it's next. Passing a kidney stone is almost up there with giving birth. And I know because I had a student who was prone to getting kidney stones, and I feel so bad for him. It was just a genetic condition. And unfortunately, the boys' bathroom was right next to my old science classroom back at Balfour. Oh God, he was like in there dying, and you'd hear him, and I'd be like, "You okay?" And he's like, "I'm just passing a kidney stone, Miss Royal. It's not you." And I'm like, "Oh God, is there anything I can do?" And he's like, "No." In bad cases, we can actually use ultrasound to break them up, but most of the time they just kind of send you on your way and say, "Yeah, it'll pass with time," and you're just in absolute pain until then. Got to be a better way to do that. Anyway, so the urinary bladder is hollow, dispensable muscular organ located within the pelvic cavity, posterior to the pubic symphysis, and inferior to the parietal peritoneum. And basically, it's a storage organ for urine. It is triangular like a trigon hat, or trigon, which is just, so it looks like an acorn. Basically, to me, it looks like an acorn. Anyway, it contracts the anterior walls of the uterus and vagina in the female, lies posteriorly against the rectum of the male, which unfortunately, it's in the dumbest place ever for us women. I mean, it's the only place it could logically go, but at the same time, it's right under the uterus and the vagina, and no, not the vagina, but it's right under the uterus. And when you have a baby growing in there, it squashes your bladder. So this is why pregnant people have to go to the bathroom all the time. Because literally, here's the growing baby, and here's your poor urinary bladder. And trust me, when my son decided to grow legs, all he did with his legs, and he still does, is kick, 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 kick. And when his legs were pointing down, that's all he did was kick, 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 kick my bladder. So my bladder got the urine kicked out of it several times. Many, many times. So, yay. Again, dumb placement. Where would it go? I'm not entirely sure, but at the same time, as a woman who was pregnant, I have issues with that placement. Anyway. So, basically the floor of the bladder has openings in each of the three corners, the two at the top for the two ureters to come into, and one at the bottom for the urethra, so that way the urine can go out. This wall consists of 4 layers: the inner mucous coat, again transitional epithelium, a submucous coat, a muscular coat, and an outer serous coat, upper surface only. That actually is kind of cool because that lets you tell you when you're really full with urine if that top part bulges out. We'll show you that in a picture in a minute. And smooth muscle fibers, the muscular coat comprised the diastole muscle. So the internal urethral sphincter surrounds the neck of the bladder. So this is the one we kind of control. So that way we can sit there and go, is it time to go to the bathroom? And in babies, they don't control it because they don't know they can yet. Or it's actually a learned thing. This is why, we have to put diapers on our babies because they don't have any bladder control. Until they figure out bladder control, and then they're like, oh. But, still, young ones can still have moments where they can't control their bladder because it's a learned behavior, but it's interesting. And if you've ever put any kid through potty training, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, again, why we have an inner mucous coat and a submucous coat is because urine can get acidic. So therefore, you want to make sure that, you're not hurting your cells that's holding everything. The muscular coat, again, so that way we can squeeze it out. And and again, the internal urethral sphincter, so that way we can wait to go to the bathroom, hopefully, unless you're in one of those moments where you can't find a bathroom and you're doing, the dance of the really need to go. So again, placement, as you can see, here's the woman's uterus opening out the vagina. And why did you put it right there? And then our urethra right there. Why? I have questions. Anyway, guys luckily don't have anybody sitting on top of theirs, so but you do have to worry about prostate problems because they are kind of connected. So you've got your own problems, guys. I get it. We all have our own problems. You've got the prostate problem, which is right here. And we're going to talk more about our friend the prostate a little later. Actually, when we get into the reproductive system. So the prostate comes back. So yeah, here's the prostate that surrounds right here. And if your prostate's misbehaving, you have a hard time going to the bathroom. So we both have our issues, both male and female. So anyway, urethra is a tubular organ that conveys the urine for the urinary bladder to outside of the body. It's lined with a mucous membrane, again for protection. It's a thick layer of longitudinal smooth muscles, again peristalsis, go wee. And many mucus glands called urethral glands. In us females, it's about 4 centimeters long. And yeah, I wish I had a way to go to the bathroom standing up when I go camping, but no. So the external urethral orifice is anterior to the vaginal opening. In a male, about 19.5 centimeters long, has a dual function for both urination and reproduction. We'll talk more about that in the reproductive system. It's 3 sections: the prostatic urethra, the membranous urethra, and the spongy urethra, which terminates at the external urethral orifice in the penis. And actually, I've got some crazy fun facts about peni. Penises? Yeah, I guess it's penises, not peni. Anyway, we'll talk more about that in the sexual reproductive system. Or just the reproductive system. Anyway, so I have weird stories and fun facts for you coming in the future chapter. Like normal. So anyway, if you get a cross-section of the urethra, this is basically what you're going to see. The pillowy things right here, the urethral glands. We've got the muscular layer right here. Here's the lumen, where basically the urine gets to hang out. And all these mucous membranes right here to protect us. And it can stretch and whatnot. And we do have, like right here, along the top part, we have stretch receptors. This is basically what tells us when we are really full and it is time to go to the bathroom, whether we like it or not. Because the more these stretch receptors can literally get stretched out, you've got to go. So that's where your sense of going to the bathroom comes from, is these stretch receptors basically relying to your body going, oh yeah, we need to go, man. We are full. And again, he goes into this and talks about, producing urine, which is also known as micturation. So, next time if you need to go to the bathroom, you can just say, I've got to go, micturate. And somebody will sit there and be like, what? And you'll be like, I have to pee. So, so there you go. Remember, always use large science words just to mess with your friends and family for fun and giggles. But anyway, so yeah, have fun and micturate well in the future, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, with that said, this ends chapter 20, and we will reconvene and talk about chapter 21 next. So until then,